In today's business world, change is the only constant, and mastering transformation is the ultimate key to success. Welcome to Shift and Thrive. I'm your host, Natalie Nathanson. Each week, we'll bring you conversations with CEOs who delve into how they successfully drove critical change in their organization. This show is sponsored by Magnitude Consulting, bringing you the thinking power of a growth consultancy and the getting it done power of a full-service B2B marketing agency. Today, we are cracking open one of the most critical yet deeply misunderstood transitions any B2B company will ever make: scaling out of founder-led sales. In the early days, no one sells your vision better than you. You carry the passion, the relationships, and the storytelling magic. But as your company matures, the scrappy marketing and sheer hustle that got you off the ground eventually stop working. You hit an inflection point. In this 40-minute special, we've brought together some of the sharpest minds we've had on the show to explore the necessity of early founder sales, the difference between founder market fit and product market fit, and the ultimate secret to scaling. Why you must figure out how to bottle the founder's magic rather than just replacing it with a professional sales leader. Let's dive in. My business has been bootstrapped from the beginning. I do think it's more common in general for services firms, but I think it really forces you to be very prudent, thoughtful, and conscientious about your investments. And for us, not just impacting our own budgeting, but how we approach clients' budgets, because they're often in a similar situation, not necessarily bootstrapped, but always very cost conscious. And I think the misconception sometimes is that you don't spend, or that you're kind of cheap on things. Where I think for me, it always means it's not don't spend, it's spend wisely. Don't throw money at a problem. Analyze the problem, look at the different ways to solve it, and then spend money where you need to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And look, the other decision also that comes very quickly, once you make that decision is, how are you going to get revenue? In a service business, you're looking at revenue from day one. In a product business, you need the product first. So there's a huge, deep hole you go into, but at the same time, it was my responsibility to bring sales in. So I was the main and only salesperson from the very beginning. And I did things that were slightly uncomfortable for myself, but I'll tell you, that was great learning, and you become more and more familiar and comfortable selling. And I needed to sell from the very beginning. So within 8 months after the company was formed, I got my first customer.
Yeah.
So that's important.
I think that's such an important point about you have to do things that you're uncomfortable doing, and then they become comfortable. And every founder needs to know how to sell, whether they like it or not. And so either you come in with that knowledge, or you learn it on the job. And no one can sell better than a founder in the early days, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. You were just talking about acquiring the first customer. Curious to hear a bit about the go-to-market and how kind of that funding decision impacted how you thought about your go-to-market. Either kind of at that time, or how that's impacted you since then.
Great question. So again, subsequently, in future companies, I've made decisions differently. But at Arava, because I couldn't afford very expensive salespeople, I ended up selling myself. But also, expensive salespeople meant, or any salespeople meant, selling direct. And I wasn't fully clear on direct versus channel. And I must say, the very first customer was a public school in Maine. And basically, I told someone that I knew who was a tech director there, this is what we're doing. What do you think? And so in a nutshell, the offering was, the browsers were becoming more prevalent. And my idea was, if you have a digital screen, why couldn't you use a browser to manage content on that screen remotely? So we need to represent, what the layout would look like. And we allowed sub-windows. You could upload your own content. Content could be text, image, videos, RSS tickers, and so forth. And you put a schedule together and you publish, and then it publishes on this internet-connected screen that you may own. This school basically used to, as most schools did, a whiteboard in the foyer, all the announcements of the day, and so on and so forth. So my friend, the tech director, said, you're saying I could have a dynamically changing content and I don't even need to go to the school. I could be doing this remotely. I said, absolutely. Okay, let's give it a shot. So again, we did not sell the hardware or nor did we do their content. So our software allowed you to do the content. And he was my first customer. I remember it was about $1,600 and I framed that check.
So, interested to hear a little bit from your experience. What are some of those most important things to get right on the go to market side as you're kind of pushing out new innovations?
Yeah, I think go to market actually. So my DNA being a product, person and a product, founder, CEO, the go to market thing was something that I actually learned over time by observing and also by making mistakes. And one of the things that um, I've learned in that whole process in terms of the go to market is that the initial, technology or the innovation that you create, oftentimes I believe that the founder or the creator has to become also the salesperson of that. It has in the way that being able to now, you have something, but you got to take it to market, and market is a lot about communication through and cutting through a lot of noise and finding those early adopters who really are willing to go out of the comfort zone and try something new, and take a bet on something. And one of the and obviously, people know this very well. Probably if you have seen Crossing the Chasm or read the book Crossing the Chasm, it's all about how to get that early adopters and then going past to the mainstream of the market. What my experience has been, and advice that I give to a lot of entrepreneurs when I talk to them, is you have to be the first person to communicate what you're building, or figure out what's the best way to talk about it, and then be the first person to try and sell it. Because while you are marketing the product and while you're selling it, you're actually also trying to figure out back to what your product should be and where is it missing the mark. And you're also able to understand how a buyer or a customer is going to perceive that product, and where will it have challenges. So it's something that, in the startup world, we often say is that, the first $1 million in sales, or even the first few $1 million in sales, have to be done by the founders, and then they can start to ramp up with building a support team around them, creating leverage around specific actions. So, bringing in somebody who can help them get in front of more people, like somebody who will go schedule the meetings for them, but they still go do that conversation. So now they're spending less time, you know, setting up meetings, for example, and then similarly in every step of the way, finding and building the team, finding the people to create leverage around them, and building the go-to-market organization with that. And some of that process and DNA, I think, becomes the way a company ultimately does its overall go-to-market and sell. Again, going back to the NVIDIA example, a lot of it for us was, we'd build the graphical chip, build the technology, and would encourage the developers, the game developers, the publishers to build games optimized for our technology. So we didn't go and sell the chip directly to people. We would encourage people to build games that take advantage of that, and that is what would drive the demand. And that's a very different go to market motion than maybe you're building a product and you're setting up a store, or you're giving people a trial or making it open source. So there are many go to market motions that are possible, but oftentimes the founder and the innovators and the creators are the ones who have to test and figure out what works best for what they have created.
You just mentioned product market fit. So wanted to hear a little bit more from you. Just, how you're thinking about that with where you are currently and what are kind of some of those motions that are helping you there.
Yeah, I mean, early in my career, I think I viewed product market fit as more of like an arrival and a point in time of like, oh, great, we have product market fit, but like in reality, it's a spectrum. And so, there's a big difference from having founder market fit, where you as a founder can find a customer, share the vision, get them excited, have them become a customer. Like that's a very different go to market motion than having a sales team and trying to find non-friendlies and bring them in, into the company as a customer. And so for us, I think it really depends on the market. We're not necessarily innovating and creating a new market. We're more of a fast follower. And so I think for us, what we've tried to do is understand what our competition has done effectively, and then to the best extent, leverage AI um, to very much streamline the onboarding, streamline the effectiveness of the technology, relative to how much effort the customer needs to put in to get value out of the product. And so, I think it's like, what is the market already dictated as a need? And then where can we find opportunities to leverage the latest and greatest infrastructure to, deliver a better experience?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that kind of phase of being in that fast follower does have certain elements to it. Like you said, best in class execution. I think that focus on differentiation, right, is really, we know there's a product market fit here. We know others are kind of in the space now. Kind of where's our place to play, right?
Exactly.
And looking at that. How do you think your sales background impacts you in kind of some of this early decision making differently than, say, maybe like a technical co-founder?
Um, it's I think there's a serious level of discomfort that I went through initially, because when you're in like the stealth mode or like the ideation or creation of technology, like there aren't measurable metrics, like how many customers, what's the ARR. And so, I think for me, just like being candid, like it was a super uncomfortable 18 months, because there wasn't these measurable metrics that you could like, kick your feet up at night and be like, oh, I did, I emptied the bucket, did a great job. And so I think on a personal level, um, that was something to get over. But I think very fortunate to have two co-founders that I've worked with previously. Um, and they specialize in software development, big data, distributed systems. And so I think my sales and go-to-market experience has been more just additive in helping get customers around us in the creation phase to make sure we really have the pulse of the customer as we're deciding what to build. Um, and so I think like the first 18 months was like they were shining, they were doing what they do, and I was just trying to be a participant and getting as many people around us and getting as much feedback on like the capabilities and what features of the product would really drive adoption. And so I think honestly, it's just being able to go and tell a half-built story, but still have confidence, and drive enthusiasm around what we're doing.
I want to ask you uh, really a little bit more from the CEO perspective. What do you see as a common mistake that CEOs make when they're trying to scale or kind of revamp their go-to-market?
I would say there's a couple of things I could think off the top. One is that the things that got you to where you are will not get you to where you want to go. And I know CEOs hear that and know that, but that applies to marketing as much as to anything. So the kinds of things that work effectively at lower scale when you're growing, even if you're growing quickly, just stop working later on. Or you get to, so let's say that you're in a new category and you're a new vendor, you've got to do all kinds of things to get attention, and it's much more kind of guerrilla marketing and outbound sales and founder-led stuff and all of that. I see that all the time, and that's great. At some point, that stops being the right way to approach getting new customers. And one of the things I see most often, and I'm actually talking about this a lot these days, is when you're a smaller company, it takes heroic efforts to get important things done, but you cannot scale on heroic efforts. You want as many heroic efforts as you can get, but you're not going to scale on heroic efforts. You're going to scale on being smart, process, using data well, using all of the benefits of the scale that you've gotten through your heroic efforts earlier, but you've got to pivot away from those. That's something a lot of companies, it's difficult to see in real time. And the better we can notice that, the better we'll be. And so that's part one, but I forgot part two.
Well, I know we've talked a little bit in the past about kind of storytelling, and kind of continuing with your point about the founders is kind of the story that they're telling and how that needs to evolve.
So that I'm calling this folklore debt, if you will. So we all know what technical debt is. You go out, you buy technology, And that locks you into a certain way of working and certain kinds of processes in your organization. And we call that technical debt. As we grow as a company, we acquire folklore debt. We acquire debt from the stories that we tell ourselves about how we become successful. And the stories about how we won in the past often are not the stories that will be about how we win in the future. And so I think there's actually, we're writing about this now, but there's a really kind of simple process. If you get company leadership together and you say, okay, well, we had our launch era. We had our scale up era. Name these kind of periods of time that are clearly different. And what are the stories that are associated with each one of those? I think it's important also in companies to celebrate those stories. You don't want to dismiss them or just get rid of them, but you got to have a trophy case where you take, that great founder story or the heroic campaign that got us our first 10 million ARR quarter or something like that. And you put it in the trophy case, and then you move on and find the stories about how you become the $250 million company or the $500 million company or whatever it is. So I think it's really important that we do that, because those stories that we tell about how we're successful really limit the options that marketers and sellers have. When the stories from the founders especially are this, how we succeed is we're guerrilla marketers. I see this in this company that I'm kind of watching these days, and they're just they're hiring somebody and they want this person to be a guerrilla marketer, and they're hiring salespeople and they've got to be the most aggressive this or that. So that's great at their stage. That's what you got to do. But if they're doing that 5 years from now, they're going to crash and burn. And it's that story that's being developed about who they are that I think we have to keep an eye on.
Hey, this is Natalie, your Shift and Thrive host. After chatting with lots of CEOs, one thing is crystal clear. Leveling up your company means having a killer go-to-market strategy. That's what my crew at Magnitude Consulting does every day. If you're trying to step up your marketing game, whether it's strategizing, accelerating your pipeline, expanding into new markets, or getting into AI and automation, let's talk. No pitch, no pressure, just good conversation. Visit shiftandthrivepodcast.com/Natalie to schedule a time. Can't wait to connect. What about timing and when to bring on RevOps, right? Whether that's a fractional service like yours, when to bring it in-house. How do you know if you're ready? How do you know if you should have brought it in a year ago? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Okay. So all claims and points expressed are opinions of Jackie Leahy only. I do not speak for RevOps. I don't know who does, but it's not me. But here's my view of it. You'll know when you need RevOps. I think there's been this push of like, oh, you need RevOps. It's like, yeah, you always want revenue to lead infrastructure, right? And I always want it to be the minimum viable structure, process, stuff to support growth. Because when you are really constraint focused solving growth, anything you solve for right now in like probably 4 months, but likely a year and a half, it's going to be irrelevant. You're going to rip it out anyway, right? It's going to be different. You're different chessboard. There might be like 10 kids on the board by then. Like, no idea. So I like to say you really want to have that product market fit. So likely that happens around like 10 to 30 customers, depending on like ACV and stuff like that. You've probably started shifting from founder-led sales to org-led sales or sales-led sales in some point. And even that, it'll probably be too early. It's really when it's the Google Sheets empire starts to crumble, right? All of a sudden, whoever is in charge of sales, the sales leader, up until that point, they've been on every sales call. They know where deals are. So a spreadsheet, they know that. But then all of a sudden, things grow to a point where it's like, I don't know who this company is. I don't don't know what the sticky points are. Are we even missing things? Is everything? And then you find out about a deal that's not on your like deal tracker final spreadsheet. And then you find someone has a copied version. That's the point where it's like, we probably do need to invest in the time and really attention. You can only prioritize one thing at a time as a company. And so it's like, okay, we gotta prepare ourselves, organize ourselves. And my thesis is that you shouldn't hire RevOps in-house until later. You really do need operators who've been there, done that, seen things. It's much more of an apprenticeship situation. So anyone that you would hire if you could, there's not many of us, right? It's a new expertise. We would be far too expensive to take on fiscally responsibly. Like, do not hire me. Like, no. Not only can you not afford me, but I'll be bored. I'll be bored out of my mind, right? So, as long as you can, I do think having that fractional center of excellence. So at first, it's like a right-hand execution. Then we grow with you, and pick a partner who has your best interest in mind, right? If like, you're gonna need a Salesforce admin. Let's get you one in-house. Let's scope that role. Let's help you get one of those, right? But a lot of things, the projects are just moving so fast. It's impossible to be an expert in lead routing and territory and comp design and like all these things to really have proficiency at. If you're in-house for like 2 years, you see everything once in one context. Whereas external consultants, fractional people, we're seeing all of this all of the time across different go-to-market motions and use cases. So things start to rhyme, patterns start to emerge. It's like, we shouldn't do that. I can't tell you exactly why, but that's not it. Let's think about it a different way. So especially when you're shifting and changing so fast, I am biased, but go fractional.
What about on the go-to-market side? You talk about what's in place. What are you working on?
So that's another transformation, if we keep with that theme, just because as founder, I have been the salesperson. In fact, the reason we had to make this shift recently is because in 2017, we decided, let's put more resources into product and bring a new product to market. And that meant we took away from sales. We had lost somebody on the sales side. We just didn't reinvest in that side. We put it in a product. And then we kept putting it into product and kept putting it into product. And we became a product-led organization. Well, frankly, we've always been a product-led organization. And to me, I love this analogy of how sales typically works. You have your hunters who take the spears and go after the whales and the big game. And you got your gatherers that take the leads that are coming in and nurture them, et cetera. I would call us fishermen. We put out nets and hope the fish swim in. We try to put them into ecosystems where the fish can live, but really that's the best we are. We take in a fish that comes through the net and we try to turn it into a sail, let's say. And so this has been a very hands-off approach, if you will. I mean, it's kind of, in a way, remarkable we've gotten to the stage we've gotten to. We need to become a sales-driven organization. And last year we brought in fractional sales leadership to help us do that. And we ended up making more sales, closing more deals than we had in the prior 2 years combined. So we know that that's the path to be on. The big leap that I'm taking with sales, though, is I have set the goal to go after the biggest of the big companies, the Fortune 500 to Fortune 1000 style companies, because that is the scale we should have been playing at this whole time. We are an enterprise software company, and we have some really big customers. But we should focus more on that because their scale and volume would be, 10x more revenue per customer, maybe 20x more revenue per customer. And therefore we could grow faster and solve more problems. We're a bootstrapped company, so we're absolutely limited by our funds. So therefore, if we go after that kind of sale, and we're really close to winning our first one already, then I think that we're going to grow faster. And that's that big how question, like, how would we do that? And I don't have to answer that question anymore. I have people who do know how to do that, that are coming on board to help that happen. I'm optimistic, Natalie. It doesn't mean it's going to work right. It doesn't mean there's not going to be challenges and struggles and we're going to go through teams or whatever. But I am now committed to this vision because lots of companies sell to the Fortune 500. So we're going to become a company that sells to the Fortune 500. That's what we're going to figure out how to do. That's our new company identity. Let's put it that way.
There we go. Well, and I think, like, to your point, right, there's different like sales motions involved. There's different marketing motions involved. You need different kind of sales and marketing infrastructure kind of in the underpinnings. And all of those pieces are the building blocks that then really help you kind of drive fast at that.
Yeah, and I think that our history helps us get there because it's not like we're abandoning our current customers, and it's not like we're going to say no to a smaller customer. I'm just saying from a sales-driven approach, we're going to go after the big of the big, and we're going to talk to everybody who's interested in what we can do from the standpoint of we can solve their problem. They have a problem that we might fit into. So it's not so much that we're only going to take a deal worth 5 million or 10 million or something like that. It's more just the mindset of we're going to strive for more. We're going to shoot for the stars and get off the ground, and we'll see where we get.
I'm curious to ask you maybe a more introspective question, thinking about your career and maybe, you know, as you started, what advice would you give your younger self in your first leadership role? So if you were sitting in the room with younger Hasib, what would you tell yourself?
We just talked about it. Sales is the most important thing. Many of my friends who start early in their career, work on these kinds of initiatives, start companies or whatever. I think that I see the following mistake made consistently. We're going to build a product and then we're going to hire a rock star sales leader and magic will. And unfortunately, magic doesn't happen, right? Most startups lose their first couple of CROs or head of sales for this very reason, because there's this completely ridiculous expectation that some guy or gal who knows nothing about what you built comes from a whole other thing, because they have sold something else in a whole different world, they will magically be able to apply policy, some process here. And I think people confuse causation and correlation when it comes to sales, right? So they think because this person was successful here, it must be because they were there. So then bring them here and then magic will happen here. And they kind of apply this ridiculous sort of, correlation chain. And then they say, why is it working? Maybe it's the product. No, the people who build it are the best people to explain why you should buy. The trick is to actually find a way to bottle the founder sale versus replace the founder sale. And I see my friends in the VC industry consistently make this mistake. You're already at 2 million. Let's hire a professional sales guy. Absolutely not. I've learned this now. I did not know this before. I have fallen into this trap twice now. No. Bottle the sale, not replace the sale. I wish I knew this 10 years ago. I really wish I knew this 10 years ago. Because what happens when this mistake is made in a startup, you end up losing time. You end up losing a year or 2 years of time, right? And time in a startup it's time, but it's the money, right? You just wasted 20, 30 million, depending on how much you burn in, because you're trying to figure this out with the whole new organization, right? Don't do that, right? There's a better way to do this, sort of with some fits and spurts. Here at Rapid, we figured that out. Again, by the grace of God, it's working really well. Our sales business process is working incredibly well, but we found a very cohesive, symbiotic way to do this, combining this notion of founder selling and professional selling versus replacing. And because we're doing sort of this together, the sellers are learning how to actually behave like founders. I see them pitch. Like I listen to a lot of first meetings. We record all of our calls. I listen to a lot of them. They're doing a great job because they're becoming storytellers. That's a distinction. The biggest distinction, in my opinion, is people who build the stuff, they know how to tell the story. Sellers don't do that. They come in and they talk about speeds and feeds and I have these customers and are better and it's cheaper. My guys are telling stories. They're not talking features. If I can replicate that to 1,000 people,
We're the most important company in this industry.
I was talking to someone recently, a serial entrepreneur, and he's kind of more in the kind of VC funded tech startup world, but he was talking about the founder selling and just, you know, how
Yep.
critical and beneficial that is to an organization, but like, how do you bottle that up and then train your sales team and support them
Yeah.
in a way? And I'm curious if there are any things that you found worked best for you as your, right, as a services firm. It is highly consultative and different implementations
Yeah.
look different.
But you got to be there, right? It's different than software, but you got to be on the front lines with your people. At the end of the day, my job is to help everyone understand the value RapDev brings. My job is not to write code. I don't write code anymore, and it's probably good for RapDev and for the customers. But my job is not to do marketing. My job is not to do finance and send invoices. My job is to be at the front with the sellers, helping customers understand what we do. And frankly, it's what I did for a career, right? So I'm trying to help customers do what I did, and for them to know that I was on their side at one point, for them to know that I was in their shoes, and that's why we're trying to solve this problem. That's frankly what I enjoy the most as well. But you have to be on the front lines. You can't hide HubSpot in a bunch of automated workflows.
Right. Those are the additive to the core.
Right. Sales is not engineering. I've come to terms with that. So sorry to all the sales guys out there who I told I could automate with HubSpot Plus. It's not going to happen.
That's a wrap for this week's episode. For show notes and more, visit shiftandthrivepodcast.com. A special thank you to our sponsor, Magnitude Consulting, bringing you the thinking power of a growth consultancy and the getting it done power of a full-service marketing agency to help B2B companies fuel their growth. For more information on Magnitude and to get your complimentary transformation readiness assessment, visit magnitudeconsulting.com/getready. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.